Good afternoon. My name is Emma Cabage. I'm a junior here, double majoring in finance and management, and I'm working with Dr. Gupta on Lights, Camera, Ambition, Understanding Female Entrepreneurship at Cinema. Now, as the title might suggest, yes, I reviewed movies starring female entrepreneurs and analyzed them. So the inspiration for this study came from a 2010 paper that focused on analyzing masculinity in the workplace. It looked at films such as The Wolf of Wall Street to explore how Hollywood presented competing forms of masculinity. And we were asking, if this has been done with men, why not women? Specifically, why not female entrepreneurs, who are actually the fastest growing segment of entrepreneurs worldwide? So our project seeks to understand what films say about them. Diving into some terms briefly, entrepreneurship is the process of, in effect, creating a new business venture. There are two big keys to that: the entrepreneurial intention and the entrepreneurial action. The intention is the idea, the want to create the business, and then the entrepreneurial action is the act of doing the business creation. And female entrepreneurship is simply entrepreneurship for women. So women are spearheading the business venture creation process. Now, we look at the intersection of gender and entrepreneurship, and there's a few key things to keep in mind with female entrepreneurship specifically. Mainly, there are new challenges and expectations that didn't previously exist. For instance, ecosystems for entrepreneurs are generally geared towards men, and societal expectations put additional pressures on women. Some of these include, but are definitely not limited to, a focus to prioritize family or a pressure to feel limited to traditionally feminine roles, such as cleaning, education, etc. And because this is a qualitative project, we look at analyzing data a little bit differently than a lot of other projects. And one of the things we focus on is the performative aspects of gender. And this is a theory that was pioneered by Judith Butler, and it's where we get the idea of the saying and doing a gender. It's, in effect, gender is a verb and not a noun. And it's used in analysis commonly because it provides a framework for us to understand gender in context. Getting into the methods of this, for selection, the big thing was that the film had to feature a female entrepreneur as its protagonist. And there aren't a lot of films in the space currently that focused on that. As for watching the films, I watched each film 1 to 3 times, and I took notes while watching them, focusing on the plot and the protagonist, with the goal of asking what pushes our heroine to entrepreneurship, what challenges does she face in her journey, and what does her journey change, how does it change her, and how does it change those around her? Following watching the films, I looked at my notes and made notes on 3 big categories: the themes, narrative structures, and the notable instances of performative gender. And I'll get into that a little later. And then these notes were reviewed and coded to compare across the films. Getting into our sample, I watched 7 features. You can see them here. They are detailed in release order. Baby Boom was released the earliest, and as we go forward, you'll see Self-Made was released the latest, our newest film being 2020. And then this is the second segment of them. 2 of them are based on real entrepreneurs, being Joy and Self-Made, while the others are all fictional. Getting into what we found out, there are 3 key themes that come across the films. They're not present in every film, but in multiple. And one of those is being entrepreneurship is empowerment for the protagonist. In The Intern, for instance, she founds an online fashion business. And throughout the course of the film, she deals with struggling managing the role of being a female founder and CEO with the help of her intern, who is played by Robert De Niro. She learns how to balance this, and despite pressures from investors to sell off her business, she's able to choose it, and this is her form of self-expression. Another common theme is that motherhood is a catalyst for entrepreneurship. For instance, in Joy, she is a struggling single mother, and in her desire to improve her circumstances for herself and her children, ends up inventing a mop, and her innovation makes her a self-made millionaire and creates a business empire. And then finally, entrepreneurship for women seems to have an impact on community, such as in Chocolate. She comes to a provincial French town with strict moral codes, and her arrival ruffles feathers, but she creates a chocolate shop, and as the film progresses, the town falls in love with her and what she's doing for the community. And at the end of the day, the social standards relax, and they're all better for it. Looking into narrative structures, narrative structure is just the intersection of plot and story. Story being the who, what, how, when, where, why of it, and plot being the order of which these events are portrayed. It's where we get with plot the discussion of dramatic structure. And most Hollywood films do follow a traditional 3-act structure. And notably, all of these films follow the same general 3 acts. Our protagonist starts out in some form of disadvantage. She's stressed. And as the film progresses, she finds entrepreneurship, and it becomes a part of her core identity. But an event, typically towards the end of the film, forces her to choose between the business and other factors, be it family, a different career path, and at the end of the day, our entrepreneur always picks the business. There are many things I could have highlighted when looking at the performative aspects of gender, but the big thing I decided to focus on for the purpose of this presentation is dress. Dress has been long studied as being a way how we portray ourselves and how others perceive us, but it hasn't really been looked at in terms of female entrepreneurs. Within these films, dress is used in several ways. One of them notably is for the female characters to convey competence. You can see in the photo labeled for Baby Boom, she starts out as a management consultant and ends up leaving that to pursue a baby formula business. But in her consulting role, she commonly dressed in neutral tones and in suits, very traditional business professional, in a way that suits the masculine environment she's in. But the dress can also be used to differentiate the character from the others. You can see in Chocolate, she wears red. Red is commonly used to associate an outcaster. She is the moral outsider for her village. Think the Scarlet Letter. It's a similar impact here. And then something else that is seen throughout is the difference between the working woman and the domestic woman. In many of these films in which the protagonist is a mother, when she's with her kids, she's seen in jeans and sweaters. But yet when it's time for her to go to her business, she appears in power suits, in tame dresses, once again going with those more neutral colors. Even our fashion protagonist is not seen in Devil's Wears Prada flamboyant things. It's more tame, it's muted, and what is deemed professional. Getting into why we did this was really to understand whether these films are supporting or challenging different cultural expectations. Now, we found that at the end of the day, they do both. Many of the films internally asked similar questions. But the big things we found that it supported was this balance between traditional roles with business, the traditional roles being family. As I've mentioned several times, many of our female protagonists are mothers. And how do they handle motherhood with work is a common thing that they have to overcome and struggle. And the fact that this is such a crux for them is key to the fact that they are women. When we look at films with male entrepreneurs or male CEOs, this is not as prominent of a theme. Another thing that they do is they dress in line with conventional standards, as I previously mentioned. In Joy, notably, I mentioned Baby Boom here with the films, but another instance is in Joy. She goes to do a promo and she shows up dressed a certain way, and they tell her, no, you're not relatable enough, you have to change. And she goes from her suit to a more casual outfit. And another thing that I think is truly notable is that they all pursue traditionally feminine industries, for the most part. You can see Waitress here, she bakes pies. Our other ones makes chocolate. We have cleaning, whether it's innovating a mop or cleaning up crime scenes, which while crime scenes are different, at the end of the day, it's still cleaning. From hair care to fashion, it's all things we traditionally associate with women. And the one woman who does something that's not a female-dominated thing, management consulting, ends up leaving that to pursue baby formula. But the films do, in fact, challenge expectations as well. They focus on women's independence, how being an entrepreneur sets them apart from others, how it gives them additional autonomy to pursue their dreams despite what others say. And it also allows women to reject social standards of those around them. Once again, that French film, Chocolate, is a great example of this. Her business is not what other people expect her to do. She faces persecution from the town, but yet she's able to persevere, and it's through her perseverance that she changed the hearts and minds of those around her. Looking into future directions, for our study specifically, I'll be watching our films over again to look for additional findings, and I'll be looking into consulting a local expert, and we'll be looking at paper publications and research conferences. For further research, we're going to look, I think, different feminist theories being mapped onto this would be an interesting find, as well as doing similar analysis with other works of films, and looking at how these themes vary across race and culture. These are our references, and I will now take questions.
So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more on the industries that these women pursue.
Yes. So like I alluded to, many of them pursue what we would consider traditionally feminine, whether that's cooking, specifically if you look at the ones who bake. Cooking, we see folks like Gordon Ramsay, so there is an edge of the top chefs are men, but baking is yet more perceived as feminine, and 2 of our female characters are pursuing this. I touched on the cleaning aspect. They clean crime scenes, they innovate a new mop design for homework, and most of her customers then become women, and notably fashion as well. She has an online fashion blog that's geared towards women. So that's just some of them, but they're all things that you would expect from women.
So my first easy question is, and I may have missed it, how many total movies did you look at?
7.
7. There's certainly a satisfying, pleasurable part of that, but you want to rewatch these and so on. That could get a bit tedious. Is there anything that, if you were to throw AI at this, what would you need to have captured from these movies other than just text for you to be able to do some kind of AI analysis, so you're not just having to rewatch these movies 2 or 3 other times?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I would love it to get screen grabs from it. So one of the things is of the setting of how it's set up, one of the things that I didn't include in this presentation, but that I did look at was the staging of elements of how other characters spoke to them. So I think if they were able to grab elements of that would be interesting, as well as if they were able to pull the scripts. AI is not always accurate, though, particularly if you ask it to analyze things from pop culture. So I'd be hesitant to use it unless I could verify exactly what it was saying.
A viewer on the live stream asked, I'm interested in hearing more about similarities and differences between men and women in these roles. You mentioned a couple things, but how about dress, for instance, or other comparisons?
Yes, so male business casual and business professional dress is jokingly very simple. Suit and tie is the standard for business professional, whereas with women you might see a dress and a blazer, a skirt and a blouse and a blazer. Business casual for men is also generally more simple. Think khakis, polo, whereas women, there's a lot more variety in that. And it does get some confusing. This is even something in literature about dress where it's hard to find what is considered female professional dress. In these films specifically, where you look at the corporate environment, you see much more of the skirt and the blazer. But in some of the other films, like Waitress, she works in a diner. So she wears a traditional diner's outfit. It is a dress. It's not considered professional. Whereas her male counterpart, most of the people she works with, they're all women. So they are dressed the same. But you do see a lot more in these films. For instance, men in jeans, men in pants, whereas women are often confined to skirts and dresses.